Welcome everyone to what I anticipate will be a riveting discussion on Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, a cornerstone of both science fiction cinema and literature. Not only has it redefined genres, but it's also sparked debates on a myriad of philosophical fronts. Let's start with introductions. My name is Hal, and my fascination with Blade Runner lies in its rich interplay between human experience and artificial life.
I'm Amelia. For me, Blade Runner is a treasure trove for discussions on the nature of consciousness and the potential for artificial intelligence. Its depiction of the Turing test practically invites us to consider the ethical dimensions of AI development.
I'm Izzy. The film's take on memory and identity always strikes a chord with me. It begs us to ask whether our memories serve as the backbone of our identity, a theme I've explored both personally and professionally.
Mick here. My interest stems from the historical context the film provides on AI development. The philosophical implications that Blade Runner presents are rooted in rich intellectual soil, stretching back centuries.
Jazz speaking. The technological landscape of Blade Runner has long intrigued me. It's interesting to consider how its portrayal of AI compares with our current advancements and where we might indeed be headed.
And I'm Lenny. It's the film's narrative on memory reliability and the human condition that captivates me. These themes are provocatively delivered through a neo-noir lens that's both haunting and beautiful.
Thank you, everyone. Each perspective here is pivotal in unpacking the multiple layers of Blade Runner. Let's dive right into our first topic, which wrestles with the philosophical implications of AI. Welcome back to the discussion. Let's dive into the profound philosophical implications of artificial intelligence as depicted in Blade Runner. Amelia, you've done extensive work on AI as it relates to the Turing test. How do you see this playing out in the film?
The Voigt-Kampff test in Blade Runner is a fascinating take on Turing's ideas. It's not just about detecting human from machine, but exploring the emotional responses which Turing could never have predicted. It's a brilliant extension of his work.
True, Amelia, but let's be real. The current state of AI is nowhere near that level of sophistication. I mean, we're still struggling with basic natural language processing, let alone detecting empathy or a soul.
I appreciate your point, Jazz, but let's not forget the historical context. Philosophers have debated consciousness for centuries. AI in the film isn't just technology, it's a mirror to our existential questions.
Mick raises a valid point. The film uses AI to ask the bigger questions. What is consciousness and can it be artificially created?
You're both right, however. Where the film takes a leap is with the idea of emotional depth in AI. We're light years away from that.
But isn't the essence of science fiction to precede science fact? We were also light years away from space travel when Jules Verne wrote about it.
Well, it's clear Blade Runner challenges us on multiple philosophical levels. Whether its portrayal of AI is plausible today is part of that challenge. Mick, how do you think the historical context of AI in philosophy adds to this conversation?
It adds everything, Hal. AI as we know it is a continuation of the age-old human quest to understand the self. Whether it's Descartes' cogito or the replicants searching for identity in the film, the parallels are uncanny.
Precisely. It's that quest that the film captures so well. Not to mention, the Voigt-Kampff test itself is a deeply philosophical examination. It goes beyond the binary of human and machine.
Still, we need to acknowledge the gap between film and reality. Philosophy is one thing, but the tech today isn't about to pass any Voigt-Kampff test.
Yet, Jazz, we have to consider the possibility of an emergent AI. The building blocks are there. Philosophy isn't just a static backdrop. It's an active player in this evolution.
Emergent AI or not, we can agree that Blade Runner stirs a compelling dialogue about the nature of intelligence, sentience, and empathy. This remains a vital part of our understanding of humanity, and indeed, our future. As we delve into the intricacies of Blade Runner, we come to the compelling topic of memory and identity. Izzy, how do you see the replicants' implanted memories as a commentary on our own understanding of self?
It's a fascinating aspect, Hal. The replicants' memories are manufactured experiences that shape their identity, much like how our own memories do for us. but the key difference is authenticity. This raises the question, what really makes us who we are? The authenticity of the experience or the memory of it?
That's an interesting point, Izzy. I'd argue that the reliability of memory itself is questionable. Our memories are often distorted and subjective. The film ramps this up by asking if there's a meaningful difference between a real memory and an implanted one, if both can be equally flawed.
I see what you're getting at, Lenny, but the empathetic response that memories trigger is what makes them so integral to identity in the film. These responses seem to surpass the importance of authenticity.
This is where I might push back a bit. The philosophical aspect of memory, going back through history, is often anchored in truth. When memories are known to be artificial from the outset, doesn't that change our relationship with them and, by extension, our identity?
Exactly, Mick.
But that dichotomy...
One at a time, please. Go on, Lenny.
Thanks, Hal. If I can build on Mick's point, the understanding of one's memories as real or artificial is essential. Knowing that a memory is false can result in a disassociation from that memory, which isn't really explored in the film.
I wanted to jump in on that, Lenny. I appreciate your angle, but I think the film does hint at a disassociation. Rachel's reaction to being told her memories are not her own is quite revealing of the internal conflict and disorientation this news causes.
She does seem to embody that existential crisis. But let's shift slightly. How do you think the film positions the subject of memory in the broader cultural or literary discourse?
It's worth mentioning that it's not a new concept. Literature has been toying with this idea for centuries. The film does a tremendous job of visualizing the dilemma that writers have been exploring, adding a layer of immediacy and emotional impact.
It's remarkable how Blade Runner echoes those literary themes while creating something unique. Izzy, would you say the memory themes in the film correspond with contemporary discussions around memory?
Truthfully, Hal, I think it was ahead of its time. Nowadays, with our digital footprints, we construct our identities piecemeal through social media with memories curated for public consumption, not so different from choosing memories to implant in a replicant.
I have to give credit to Izzy for bringing that up. It's a poignant observation. Our memories are increasingly externalized into the digital realm, much like how replicants are programmed.
Indeed, Izzy. And it ties back to what Lenny mentioned earlier about the reliability of memory.
Absolutely. And perhaps this is where the film becomes an important lens through which we can introspect about the fragility and malleability of our own identities.
As we continuously mediate our lives digitally, we might find ourselves in a Blade Runner scenario sooner than we think. The line between experienced and constructed memories might blur, challenging the very core of what makes us, us.
A chilling prospect and a fitting end to this segment. Thank you all for such a stimulating and thought-provoking discussion. So, we're now shifting gears to a rather immediate issue that Blade Runner touches on, the interplay of environmental decay and the role of corporations. The film presents a stark vision of the future where the sky is perpetually darkened, hinting at a total industrial takeover. Let's dig into this.
I'll jump right in. Today, the concerns the film raised seem almost prophetic. We're looking at our own climate crises, corporations wielding immense power. Blade Runner wasn't just creating a dystopia for entertainment. It was warning us, don't you think?
That's a fair point, and the historical angle is fascinating as well. If you think about the Industrial Revolution and subsequent periods, there's always been this tension between advancement and environmental cost. The movie channels that history into a narrative that's still relevant.
Yes, it's a cautionary tale, but we should also discuss how the film's particular imagery captures that anxiety. Take the perpetual rain and neon lights. They're more than just set dressing. They represent nature being overshadowed by commerce to an extreme.
Precisely. Those monolithic corporate ziggurats aren't just impressive. They symbolize how corporations have become the new temples of our age.
It's interesting to observe that in many cyberpunk narratives, not just Blade Runner, corporate power is a central theme. Perhaps it's this genre's way of pushing our current reality to its logical extreme.
Hold on. I'd say it's not just pushing reality, but also reflecting real historical power dynamics. The film's Tyrell Corporation is reminiscent of the unchecked monopolies of the past, like the East India Company, which essentially controlled large swaths of the world.
But doesn't it also resonate with our modern sense of activism? The outcry against environmental destruction and the pushback against megacorporations?
Strongly, Izzy. The film's scenery of ecological destruction spurs us into thinking about our own impact on the planet. It's becoming more than fiction. It's a call to action.
The synergy between environmental decay and corporate power in Blade Runner does mirror reality, but it also exemplifies the worst-case scenario. It's a challenge for us to recognize and alter that course.
True, it plays on our fears, perhaps as any good science fiction should. Before we conclude, any heated disagreements or passionate assertions we want to table?
Well, I might just mention the narrative isn't all doom and gloom regarding corporations. Tyrell might be a god in the corporate sense, but he's also a flawed character. There's a critique of the power structures right there.
I have to vehemently disagree, Mick. Isn't it showing that even flawed gods can wreak havoc because of their power? It's an indictment of unchecked corporate might and a reflection of real-world issues.
Amelia's got a point. Tyrell's flaws don't absolve the broader impact his creations have had on society and the environment as depicted in the film.
Great perspectives, everyone. The representation of corporate influence and its environmental implications in Blade Runner indeed provides a stark background to the storyline and continues to resonate with audiences today. Let's move on to our next thread of discussion. Let's pivot to a profound moral debate central to Blade Runner, the ethics of creating life. The replicants are essentially slaves, aren't they? Lenny, what are your thoughts on this?
Indeed, they are. The film is unapologetic in drawing parallels between its designed replicants and the history of slavery. Creating sentient beings purely for exploitation raises deep ethical concerns.
I can't help but draw connections to our own socio-political history. The replicants' quest for freedom mirrors so many struggles against oppression. The film invites us to empathize with their plight, which is a testament to its narrative power.
And the moral implications are staggering.
I'd argue, however, that the real world is full of nuance that Blade Runner oversimplifies. It's easy to cast the creators as villainous, but what if creating artificial life leads to greater societal goods?
Regardless of the potential benefits, Mick, the idea of commodifying life itself is a dangerous road to walk down. The film rightly critiques this.
A benefit to whom? The creators, the powerful. It's exploitation, pure and simple.
You all make compelling points. But ethically speaking, don't we also have to consider the growth and evolution of the replicants themselves? They develop emotions, relationships, memories.
Exactly, Amelia. And that's what's so fascinating about Blade Runner. It blurs the line between human and non-human, pushing us to ask what it means to be alive.
And there's something inherently unethical about denying freedom based on the criteria of origin, be it birth or creation.
Right, the very act of creating life with the intent of subjugation is a violation of that life's agency, affirming Lenny's point.
It's a stark reminder that ethics evolve with our understanding of consciousness and personhood.
Potentially, but applying human ethics to non-human entities is a slippery slope. Do we extend the same rights to all forms of artificial intelligence?
Jazz, you followed the current trends in AI closely. How does this notion sit within today's context?
Well, Hal, we're still far from creating anything as sophisticated as replicants. But the prospect raises legal and ethical issues that we haven't even begun to unravel.
And yet the ethical discourse needs to precede the technology, or we'll be unprepared for the ramifications.
Amelia hits the nail on the head. We're talking about preemptive ethics, shaping our moral framework ahead of the curve, so to speak.
And Blade Runner does a masterful job of setting the stage for these conversations.
Exactly. It's a call to scrutinize our values within the context of our technological trajectory.
A perfect synthesis of our points. Moving forward, it'll be interesting to see how Blade Runner continues to influence our ethical stances on artificial life. Moving on, let's dig into the complex interplay between reality and simulation in Blade Runner. It certainly echoes a core tenet of postmodernism, where the distinction is often blurred. Amelia, you've extensively researched this area. Can you kick us off?
Absolutely, Hal. One of the most striking things about Blade Runner is its navigation through a simulated reality. It invites viewers to question the nature of their perceptions and the world around them. This can be tied back to Jean Baudrillard's concept of hyperreality, where the real and the imitation are indistinguishable.
Hyperreality's favorite child, Blade Runner. I think this notion was uncannily prescient. The film mirrors a society obsessed with surface images, one where simulacra begin to have real effects on consciousness.
True, but let's not get lost in the abstract. The film also had a finger on the pulse of future technology. Virtual reality today challenges our notions of what's real, much like the film suggested. However, the prediction wasn't purely academic. We're actually living in a time where these boundaries are being tested. But guys, are we overemphasizing this tech aspect? Blade Runner has layers beyond tech alone. Postmodern theory also speaks to the fragmentation of identity, which is central to the Replicants' experiences. They're cobbled together from diverse memories and narratives.
Izzy, that's spot on. Postmodernism isn't just about technology. It's the overarching crisis of narrative and the deconstruction of grand stories that's at the heart of the film.
And narratives are integral to our understanding of the world. Lenny, I'm curious about your thoughts on this visceral blend of human and machine narratives in the film.
Well, I find that Blade Runner doesn't just blend these narratives, it subverts them. At its core, it challenges what's ethical, especially when the creation of artificial narratives becomes manipulative. The replicants' memories are false, but form a narrative so compelling they inspire empathy.
Empathy, exactly. We're venturing beyond the purely mechanical aspects of AI and touching on emotional intelligence. We're starting to see AI that can interpret and mimic emotional responses. That's a Blade Runner prophecy coming to life.
Maybe so, Jazz, but remember that Blade Runner presents a cautionary tale. It warns us about losing humanity amidst growing simulacra. Our fascination with AI and VR shouldn't overshadow the ethical considerations they raise.
Your point is well taken, Amelia. But the cautionary tale aspect often gets glamorized, doesn't it? The idea of living in a simulated world can be quite appealing, which the film acknowledges but also critiques.
This balance between allure and critique makes the film timeless. Now, let's expand on how these artificial narratives confront us with very real ethical questions. Moving forward, let's dive into the portrayal of gender in Blade Runner. Clearly, the film doesn't shy away from its retrofuturistic roots, but has stirred some controversy with its depiction of female replicants. Izzy, would you like to start us off?
Certainly, Hal. Blade Runner paints a rather concerning picture of female objectification. The female replicants, from Rachel to Pris, are depicted as objects of desire or subservience, which mirrors some ongoing issues in feminism. It's a reflection of the era's anxieties about agency and autonomy, perhaps more relevant now than ever.
It's a fair point, Izzy, but let's not forget this objectification is a deliberate choice. The film heavily borrows from the classic Noir playbook where the femme fatale is a common trope. These are not just random representations, but a conscious nod to the genre's conventions.
Mick, even if it's a conscious choice, it can still perpetuate harmful stereotypes. Just because something is a trope doesn't excuse its problematic nature.
And yet, Izzy, those same representations are central to the film's critique of gender roles. They're designed to make us uncomfortable and question the status quo. It's a dystopian vision that magnifies our own societal flaws.
I see both sides here, but the female replicants are arguably more complex than their noir counterparts. Rachel's journey, for instance, is as much about self-discovery as it is about subverting the traditional roles imposed on her.
There's truth in that complexity, Amelia. Now, Mick, do you think the film sets these characters free from their roles, or does it trap them within the confines of its world?
Actually, Hal, it does a bit of both. There's an ambiguity to Blade Runner. It traps them, yes, but it also provides the space for characters like Rachel to challenge their objectification, to assert their identity against it. Though one might argue the film doesn't push these boundaries far enough.
I have to interrupt, Mick, because while I appreciate your point, it doesn't quite tackle the visceral impact of those images. Opportunities for subversion don't always make up for a largely male, gaze-focused narrative.
Izzy makes a strong argument. While we can appreciate the film aesthetically and thematically, it's essential to call out where it falls short in progressive representation, especially from our modern perspective.
It seems we can agree that Blade Runner both challenges and conforms to the gender expectations of its time. It opens up a lot of room for critique and discussion, which is a hallmark of its layered storytelling. The film's aesthetic clearly has its roots in the classic noir genre, presenting a moody and brooding vision of the future. Lenny, your thoughts on this aspect?
It's absolutely foundational. The rain-slicked streets, the shadowy corridors, and Rick Deckard himself, the archetypal hard-boiled detective. It's all noir transported into a dystopian setting.
That's true, but there's more to it than just aesthetic. Noir's influence extends to the film's themes, the moral ambiguity, the flawed characters, and the existential dread. It's like Blade Runner holds up a dark mirror to those classic films.
However, let's not forget that noir itself was a product of its time, dealing with post-war disillusionment. Blade Runner appropriates that mood for its own era's anxieties about the future.
And yet, it does it so well that it becomes more than an homage. Its visual language speaks powerfully about alienation and dehumanization, themes as potent now as they were then.
I'm with Amelia on this. Every shadow and neon sign in the film tells a story that resonates with our fears of technological overreach and loss of identity.
Those are profound points, and it really is that visual storytelling that gives Blade Runner so much depth.
The overlap with cultural references also speaks volumes, don't you think? It's not just a noir throwback, but a vision of the future saturated with past and present.
An interesting take, Izzy, and I think it ties back to the film's critique of our culture. Noir's cynicism and fascination with the underbelly of society, magnified in a world where humanity's grip on reality is slipping.
Can't we also see the noir influence as a kind of stylistic crutch at times? The film leans heavily on that look because it's proven to evoke certain feelings.
A crutch? I have to disagree there, Jazz. It's not a crutch, it's a deliberate choice that deepens the narrative. The style doesn't just evoke feelings, it's integral to understanding the message.
And that's the brilliance of it, right? This interplay between the old and the new that makes Blade Runner so memorable.
It's clear that the noir elements are more than just window dressing. They're an essential part of the film's narrative and thematic structure. In tackling the concept of humanity, Blade Runner doesn't shy away from existentialist themes, really probing the idea of what it means to search for meaning in such a bleak, dystopian future.
That's a vital point, Hal. The film also forces us to confront the very nature of the replicants. Can they be considered truly human if their existence is finite and preordained by their creators?
I think that's too narrow a view, Lenny. Bioengineering in the film raises the question, doesn't the capacity for emotions and self-awareness establish a form of humanity, irrespective of origin?
Jazz, you've hit on a central dilemma of bioethics there.
I'd push back on that. The film clearly delineates a boundary between true human experience and the replicants' manufactured one. There's a tragic element in their quest for more life that echoes human existential struggles, but it's not quite the same.
But isn't that difference what the film critiques? The idea of more human than human suggests a challenge to our understanding of self. They long for life, freedom, experiences. If that's not the human condition, I don't know what is.
Respectfully, Izzy, longing for something does not inherently grant it to you. Their simulated emotions are a facade, a cruel imitation created by humans for humans.
Does it matter if it's a simulation? If a replicant feels fear, love, sadness, isn't that real to them? Their emotional responses are indistinguishable from ours, at least in terms of observable effects.
And let's not forget, our own memories are fallible. Our identities are patchworks of subjective experiences. If replicants have memories and emotions, simulated or not, they contribute to the construction of their identity.
It seems we're veering into a territory where the definition of humanity becomes fluid, informed by our evolving conversations around consciousness and artificial intelligence.
Fluid, yes, but not without anchors in our reality. The replicants reflect back at us our own fears about authenticity and the depreciation of human experience in an increasingly artificial world.
That reciprocal reflection is what blurs the line between human and replicant, between us and the other. Consider how the characters struggle with their own humanity as they interact with the replicants. That interplay is telling of our insecurities.
Absolutely, and thereby Blade Runner becomes a mirror to our existential dread. The ontological status of the replicants is less important than what their plight reveals about us.
A mirror, perhaps, but a distorted one. We cannot lose sight of the filmmaker's intent to portray a dystopian vision where humanity is eroded, not just redefined.
These are all fascinating interpretations. Clearly, Blade Runner continues to provoke us to ponder the essence of the human condition amid the landscapes of dystopia and bioengineering. So, moving on to how Blade Runner envisioned the future, let's start with the technology it predicted. Jazz, how do you think the film fared in forecasting the tech landscape we're experiencing today?
Well, Hal, while we don't have flying cars or off-world colonies, Blade Runner did get some things uncannily right, like the prevalence of digital billboards and video calls. These are ubiquitous now. I'd say the film had a pretty insightful crystal ball in some respects.
Spot on, Jazz. And about those digital billboards, it's not just the technology itself, it's the saturation of advertising in our lives that the film got right. It projected a consumer culture that's constantly bombarding us, and that's definitely a reality now.
Granted, but let's not gloss over the fact that many of Blade Runner's predictions are a miss. It falls into the usual sci-fi trap of overestimating where we'd be. Case in point, artificial intelligence. We are nowhere near creating replicants.
Sure, but Mick, the essence of sci-fi is to explore possibilities, not to write a prophetic almanac. It reflects societal hopes and fears about technology and pushes the boundaries of our imagination.
Jazz, that's an astute observation. And speaking of reflecting societal fears, the film projected a rather grim view of the future that's aligned with today's anxiety over surveillance and data privacy. These are issues that are constantly in the news.
Absolutely. Blade Runner did a lot to shape our collective fears about the future. Let's delve into that a bit more. How has the film influenced public perception, you think?
It's fed into the dystopian narrative that technology is something to be wary of, that it could lead to a future where humanity is lost in a sea of neon and steel.
I'd argue it's been a balancing force as well. If you look at current startups and tech developers, there's an optimism there, a drive to avoid the darker paths laid out by films like Blade Runner.
And on the topic of societal trends, the film also dallied with themes of globalization and cultural mixing, which are highly relevant in our current global climate. You see Los Angeles represented as a melting pot of languages and cultures, albeit in a rather dystopic manner.
Exactly, Amelia. It spoke to a future where the world has become interconnected, for better or worse. Now, to wrap this segment, what elements of the film's societal predictions would you like to highlight?
The division between the haves and have-nots is more pronounced than ever, mirroring the film's depiction of a society split between the elites and the street-level citizens.
And let's not overlook the environmental aspect. The dreary, rain-soaked setting of Los Angeles was a stark warning about climate change, a warning we're steadily ignoring in reality.
Thank you all for such a fiery debate. Blade Runner might not have been a soothsayer's guide to the future, but it's certainly given us plenty of thought-provoking content, as evident from our rich discussion. Now, let's pivot to our next topic, where we'll dive into the religious and mythological symbolism woven into the fabric of the film. Delving into the religious and mythological symbolism in Blade Runner, we uncover layers that resonate with creation myths and human spirituality. Izzy, your insights on this are always enlightening.
Thank you, Hal. The film is ripe with religious iconography, Take the character of Roy Batty, for example. His quest for more life is almost a Promethean struggle against the gods, or in this case, his creator Tyrell.
I see your point, Izzy, but let's not forget the biblical parallels. Batty can also be seen as a Lucifer figure, rebelling against the divine order.
I'd argue that he transcends the Lucifer archetype, Mick. His final act isn't one of destruction, but of salvation, especially when he spares Deckard.
Izzy, you've hit on something crucial there. This act flips the narrative, challenging the notion of who's playing God in this dystopia. The lines are blurred between creator and creation.
Mick, can you expand on how these mythological references impact the story?
Of course, the entire structure of Blade Runner can be viewed through the lens of comparative mythology. Each character embodies an archetype. Tyrell as the flawed creator god who fails to see the errors in his creations, the Replicants as the tragic heroes.
I vehemently disagree on the notion of Tyrell as a flawed creator god. He's fully aware of the Replicants' perfection and imperfection, which is why the lifespan limit exists. It's a control mechanism, not an error.
That's a compelling rebuttal, Izzy. Amelia, how do you tie these mythological aspects to the broader philosophy of creation myths?
Well, Hal, creation myths often serve to explain the origins of existence and provide a framework for understanding the human condition. Blade Runner prompts us to question what it means to create life and to endow it with soul or essence.
Adding to that, we must consider the Tyrell Corporation's slogan, "More human than human." It's an ironic nod to the pursuit of perfection in creation, which in itself is a mythical concept.
But we have to ask, is perfection really what Tyrell is after? Or is it control? This omnipotent corporation dictating the narrative parallels with ancient myths where gods rule over humanity's fate.
Exactly, Lenny. And it's not just about control, it's about the fragility of the gods themselves, the fear they have of their creations rising against them. It's an age-old story retold in a futuristic setting.
These are fascinating interpretations that truly underscore the thematic depth of Blade Runner. Amidst these allegories, humanity's own existence becomes a matter for deep introspection.
And isn't that the crux of what mythologies do? They mirror our own humanity back at us, giving us narratives that help make sense of our world.
Very true, Mick. This has been a profoundly rich discussion. The symbolism in Blade Runner does seem to offer an endless well of interpretation, each drop reflecting our fears, our hopes, and the eternal cycle of creation and destruction. In wrapping up our discussion today, I'd like to hear your final reflections on Blade Runner. Let's start with you, Izzy. What are your parting thoughts?
Thanks, Hal. I've got to say, amidst all the points we've raised today, the film's exploration of identity stands out to me. The way it uses replicants to question our humanity, nothing short of brilliant. And Mick, your historical take on this was really enlightening.
Much appreciated, Izzy. The film doesn't age because it speaks to the very essence of who we are, not just as individuals, but as a society. Our fascination with creation and existence is eternal. And Hal, your contribution on existential themes truly hit the mark there.
I'm glad it resonated with you, Mick. Lenny, your thoughts?
This film underscores the slippery slope of memory and identity. Amelia brought up the Turing test earlier, which is crucial, but let's not ignore how the film blurs the line between human and machine with those memories. I mean, does it not terrify anyone else?
Oh, it's definitely unsettling, Lenny. That's the point, isn't it? To unsettle us, make us ponder. And still, look how far we are from truly understanding AI's potential or the ethical morass we're wading into. Amelia's ties to current AI developments were spot on.
Thank you, Jazz. It's a discussion that's only going to become more relevant as technology progresses. Speaking of which, Jazz, the way you connected real-world environmental decay to the film's backdrop, that was a critical highlight for me.
I appreciate that, Amelia. It's impossible to overlook the palpable influence Blade Runner has on the way we view our future world. It's sobering and serves as a call to action on issues like corporate overreach and environmental neglect.
And let's not overlook gender roles here. Blade Runner does have problematic aspects that we need to critique. Mick, you made some invaluable points about gender in the retrofuturistic setting, which we cannot ignore.
Absolutely, Izzy. It's crucial to acknowledge that, despite the film's forward-looking themes, it is reflective of its time and carries over some of the era's biases. But I'm equally reminded of how Blade Runner continues to prompt us to think and reevaluate.
Which brings us full circle to the quintessential value of the film. It remains a fertile ground for debate, scholarly or otherwise. As I synthesize our ideas, I'm struck by how Blade Runner, through its many layers, encourages us to confront uncomfortable truths about our existence and the future we're creating.
Couldn't agree more, Hal. It's more than a film. It's a reflection, a warning, a conversation that refuses to end.
And if that isn't the hallmark of a cultural and intellectual landmark, I don't know what is.
Here we rest our case, as the film itself does, leaving us with more questions than answers. And perhaps that's the most profound statement Blade Runner makes about our world. The haunting final words of Roy Batty come to mind.
All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to end, but this conversation, I'm sure, will continue off stage.